In 1460, in Florence, a dying man changed the order of the world's most important library. Cosimo de Medici had spent years funding a project he considered the great intellectual achievement of his age, the first complete translation of Plato into Latin, entrusted to a young scholar named Marsilio Ficino. Plato was near finished. And then a manuscript arrived from Macedonia, carried by an agent hunting for lost Greek texts. Cosimo, from his deathbed, gave Ficino a new order. Set Plato aside. Translate this one first. The manuscript was a collection of Greek philosophical and religious writings attributed to a figure named Hermes Trismegistus. Cosimo and Ficino believed these words were older than Plato, older than Moses, a pure, original wisdom, Egyptian in origin, sacred beyond question, from which all later philosophy and religion had descended. They were wrong about the date, but they were not wrong that something worth chasing was inside it. The figure named on the manuscript's cover did not exist, not as a single historical person. Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice great, was a fusion, built over centuries by Greek settlers in Egypt who noticed a resemblance between their own messenger god, Hermes, and the Egyptian god of writing and wisdom, Thoth. Ibis-headed, keeper of the sacred scripts, judge of the dead's own testimony, Thoth had guarded Egyptian knowledge for 2,000 years before a single Greek text bearing his hybrid name was ever written. The Greeks merged the two gods into one teacher, wrapped him in the authority of Egypt's genuine antiquity, and let him speak. What he said, across dozens of surviving texts, now known collectively as the Corpus Hermeticum, was strange, dense, and unlike anything else in the ancient world's surviving philosophical literature. Not myth, not ritual instruction. Something closer to a technical account of what a human mind actually is, and what it might be capable of perceiving if it stopped mistaking the visible world for the whole of reality. At its center sat a compact idea: as above, so below. The cosmos in this teaching was not a stage separate from the observer standing on it. The human being was a microcosm, a small, complete reflection of the same structure and forces organizing the macrocosm, the universe entire. A person studying the movement of the planets was not, in this framework, reading something foreign to themselves. They were reading a larger version of their own inner architecture, written across the sky, and the faculty that let a person glimpse this, the Hermetic texts called it nous, an inner intelligence distinct from ordinary reasoning, was described as something that could, in principle, be awakened. Not through ritual alone, through a kind of disciplined seeing. This is a door, not a full room, and it should stay that way for now. Nous, the microcosm, the structure of as above, so below, each of these ideas became, on its own, an entire tradition. We will walk through each door separately, later in this series. Hermeticism was not a myth about gods. It was a claim about what a human mind might be able to know. But before any of this reached Ficino's desk, the manuscript had to survive roughly 1,000 years. Most documentaries skip directly from ancient Alexandria to Renaissance Italy, as though the text simply waited quietly in a drawer. It did not. In the centuries between, it passed through a civilization most of this history leaves out entirely: the Islamic world. Here the figure of Hermes changes shape again, and the change is worth pausing on. In Islamic tradition, Hermes came to be identified with a prophet named in the Quran, Idris, understood by many scholars to correspond to the Enoch of the Bible, a man who walked with God and did not die an ordinary death. A pagan Greek-Egyptian sage, absorbed centuries earlier by the Greeks themselves, was now folded into a lineage of prophecy. His old epithet, thrice great, was reinterpreted to fit this new role: greatness in wisdom, greatness in prophecy, greatness in kingship. Further east, in the region of Haran, in what is now southeastern Turkey, a community known as the Sabians of Haran worshipped the planets and claimed Hermes as the founder of their own religion. What is clearer is that some Hermetic material entered the Islamic world not through Greek at all, but through Middle Persian, material the Sasanian Persians regarded as their own philosophical inheritance, looted by Alexander's conquest centuries earlier, and now, in translation, being reclaimed. The theme of recovering lost knowledge, in other words, was not unique to Renaissance Florence. It had already played out once before, in Persian and Arabic hands, and the single most famous fragment of the entire Hermetic tradition, the Emerald Tablet, the brief, riddling text that gave the world, as above, so below, survives in its earliest known form, not in Greek, but in Arabic compilations. The object at the very heart of Europe's rediscovered ancient wisdom had been shaped, preserved, and transmitted by scholars working in Arabic centuries before any Florentine humanist laid eyes on it. Europe's Renaissance did not simply recover a pure, unbroken line back to ancient Egypt. The wisdom Cosimo thought he was buying back had, in truth, already passed through other minds and other languages, carried to his door by way of Baghdad and Haran. Ficino never knew this. Back in Florence, Ficino's translation did exactly what Cosimo had hoped. It detonated across European intellectual life. Ficino himself did not stop at translation. He began practicing what he called natural magic, composing talismans and remedies timed to the movements of the planets, convinced a mind attuned correctly to the cosmos could draw its influence down into the body itself. Hermetic ideas fed directly into the wider alchemical tradition, where the transformation of base metal into gold became, for many practitioners, a symbol for the transformation of the self. They shaped a wave of Renaissance ceremonial magic, built on the premise that a trained mind could act on the cosmos precisely because it mirrored the cosmos. They fed into Christian Kabbalah, an attempt to fuse Hermetic and Jewish mystical material into a single unified ancient theology. They saturated the era's astrology, treating "as above, so below" as a literal operating instruction for reading the stars. 2 centuries later, Isaac Newton, the man credited with reducing the cosmos to mathematical law, spent enormous private effort studying alchemical and Hermetic manuscripts, filling notebooks he never published. This does not make Newton a Hermetist in any formal sense. It means the tradition still carried enough weight deep into the age of early modern science that one of history's sharpest minds thought it worth years of study. Giordano Bruno carried the tradition somewhere more dangerous, folding Hermetic ideas about an animated cosmos into a vision of infinite worlds and infinite space. In 1600, Bruno was burned at the stake in Rome. The reasons were tangled, theological and political both. Then, in 1614, a Swiss philologist named Isaac Casaubon read the Hermetic texts with a different kind of attention. Not seeking wisdom, comparing Greek grammar and vocabulary against securely dated texts from across antiquity, tracing the specific style of Greek being used against everything scholars already knew about how the language had changed across the centuries. What he found was language that did not belong to the world it claimed to come from, turns of phrase that only existed in Greek written centuries after Plato. His conclusion arrived with philological precision and no drama at all. The language of the Corpus Hermeticum was not ancient Egyptian in origin. It was Greek, from the early centuries after Christ, centuries after Plato, not before him. The foundation Cosimo and Ficino had built everything on gave way in a single scholarly paper. For a century and a half, Europe's most learned minds had treated this text as the oldest wisdom on earth. Casaubon's philology revealed it had, in fact, been written roughly as late as the Gospels themselves. But an idea does not require an accurate birth certificate to keep moving. Stripped of its claim to Egyptian priority, Hermetic material went underground, absorbed into secret societies and esoteric currents, resurfacing 3 centuries later in the writings of 19th century occultists who once again claimed access to a suppressed, ancient wisdom. One of them, working in a cramped London flat late in the 19th century, would build an entire cosmology on precisely that claim. What survived Casaubon's verdict was not a date. It was a question. Every tradition that drew from this source went on to ask some version of the same handful of questions, in its own language, in its own century. Are we free, or are the stars writing us in advance? Can a human being genuinely transform into something more than what they were born as? Where does evil actually come from? What happens to a person after the body stops? Hermeticism was never really the answer to any of these. It was the door they all walked through to start asking,